Yen Show, all my friends out here, Gray Delaney, Ron Grinnell, Joe Thomas. Thank you all for coming, Bill, and for letting me speak. So someone just took my notes away.
That's not good.
Thank you so much. My name is Rosso, I'm 58. I'm a lifelong conservative. I got that way because my dad was a lifelong conservative. He grew up in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. He was a combat engineer in World War II, and he was a little bit to the right of Attila the Hun. And he instilled in his children, in 5 kids, really founding American principles, conservative principles. I was 7 years old, and he had me campaigning for Barry Goldwater, my first election.
Hey!
I was even better than next year, he had me campaigning for William F. Buckley. And I got in trouble because I stabbed the nun told me to get my button off, my button, and a kid tried to grab it, so I took it and stabbed him with it. I ended up in the principal's office, and the principal was another great nun of the Sacred Heart. She goes, "Oh, here you go, take your button." I think he voted for Buckley. But, so I'm an Albemarle County resident. I've lived in other counties in Virginia, but for the last decade, I've called this place home. My 2 children were 10 and 13 when we got here, and they call it home. Covenant, my daughter is 23, she's graduating UVA. My son's a 20-year-old second-year UVA. And my background, for almost 40 years, I've been very involved in fundamental design work in computer engineering. I've designed nitrogen cooled supercomputers, air-to-ground, payphone, telephone systems, you name it, all sorts of firewalls, systems and system stuff. A lot of blank piece of paper, fundamental design work. And in my career, I ended up becoming the chief technology officer of 3 large public tech companies. I had hundreds of people working for me, ran large multi-million-dollar budgets, developed not only developed state-of-the-art technology, had to figure out what the next state was supposed to be. You know, one of those companies was the 2nd largest manufacturer of disk drives in the world. 2 software companies that are part of EMC, and I was involved in a half dozen startups too, so I know what it takes to make a payroll, I know what it means to struggle, I know what the expenses are of work and how to actually organize and lead people. And how I ended up in Charlottesville, for about 20 years, I was very concerned about the bad course that the country's on. And so someone recently told a buddy of mine, who's a famous general, when the general mentioned I was running, he goes, "Oh, all that Rosso knows is national security." But in fact, that's probably what I should know least. In fact, I have deep appreciation for the American founding, for theology in the Bible, for really social, economic issues, especially based on that of the classic philosophers and Christian principles. And I was so worried the last decade how bad things were going that I did a couple of years stint out in California and coming back and forth to DC all the time, where I've been advising government agencies on a variety of topics. And I just had to move back. And I gave up a cushy executive position. I moved back. I brought my family here, both because it's far enough away from DC. I felt my children are safe, and also, surprisingly, if you look for hundreds of miles, other than Lynchburg, you got to go up to Philadelphia or down the coast. You can't find a classic academy academically like the Covenant School that also has a Christian worldview they teach children. My children were brought up their whole life in private Christian schools because I'd rather have the state and government feed and clothe them than educate them, because the education process is so corrupted. So you know, I came here because essentially, when this is 2005, 2006, I couldn't look my kids in the eyes in 2015 and 2020 and say, this entire mess, the world's on the verge of World War III. I knew it was happening, but I was too busy with my own business. So instead, I took my resources and my time, and I've been struggling, really humping it hard. As might have been mentioned in my bio, I'm a fellow at the Claremont Institute. And if you don't know Claremont, it's the preeminent political philosophy think tank on the American founding. Their stated mission is to restore American founding principles back into government, which is what we were all here for, right? That's all we want. And so we've spent decades understanding who broke it, how they broke it, how to fix it. And we got to get more Claremont people into government. So you're familiar with some, like Tom Cotton in the Senate's a Claremont fellow. Tom McClintock out of California in the House. Mark Levin. Andrew Breitbart, my dearly departed friend, were all Lincoln fellows. Journalists you've seen, Steve Hayes or Tom Johnson, the Weekly Standard, all Claremont fellows. And in fact, one of my professors, and also a close friend and a supporter of this campaign, is Angela Codavilla, And if you see me toss the term ruling class around, that's because Angelo wrote a piece in the Weekly Standard a few years ago where he popularized that and basically said we've been sold down the drain by a ruling class in both parties. This is such a powerful essay. Google it on the American Spectator. Rush Limbaugh, when this was published, stopped his entire show and for 3 straight hours just read that article on the whole. That's all he did that day on the show. And you'll be rightfully enraged when you read it. And so we're all about, stopping and fixing this. And after 20 years on the outside, I realized you need to have an outsider that knows what's broken on the inside to fix it. Because I can account for my time across a variety of areas doing this, hundreds of meetings, DOD, NORAD, Global Strike Command, DHS, Special Operations Command. In fact, someone who's a big insider, and I'm not a politician anyway, in any way, mean, or shape. They actually brought me in for over a year into private social circles, the innermost rings of Boehner and Saxby-Chambliss and these guys. And to give you an idea how far out of whack they are, this was we're having a private dinner. A few of us, I'm sitting at a little card table at a Italian joint. There's Boehner there, Saxby-Chambliss, a couple congressmen. And I go, not for nothing, guys, but you really should put, the outrage is not even peaked on how bad Obamacare is. You should really put an alternate legislation in. And before I get the words out of my mouth, as just a visceral reaction, oh, no. You know what we have to do? We have to do comprehensive immigration reform. And I was shocked. And he goes, tell me about your guy. And this congressman goes, well, I have a constituent, third-generation Mexican-American. He's got dozens of restaurants taking them to legal aliens to work for him. So he's starting to vote for Obama. And that's what they're focused on. I probably shouldn't say illegal alien. I think it's undocumented Democrat right now. But it's illegal alien, right? So you have a Congress that's completely controlled by special interests. They don't care. They use you as just a tool to satisfy the donor class. If you look at Tom Donahue of the Chamber of Commerce, he set an agenda with the Republican leadership back in the end of 13 and 14. He said, I want 4 things. He says, I want to have comprehensive immigration reform and citizenship for illegal aliens. I want to shove Common Core down your throat and make your children vassal widgets for global corporations. I want to completely implement the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I want to, so Common Core, TPP, immigration, and Obamacare, full implementation of Obamacare. So in 2014 and 15, what was the Republican leadership's 4 big legislative priorities? Those. That's not. We don't want any of that. I mean, we couldn't tell them enough ways from Sunday. We don't want Syrian refugees. Oh, let's fund 200,000 of them. We couldn't. The atrocious videos. Well, thank you. Well, that's okay. You see homicide in Planned Parenthood videos, fully funded. I mean, what are these guys thinking, right? So the American people aren't stupid, they know this. A September Fox News poll used a very interesting phrase that I never heard before. They asked, do you feel betrayed by the GOP leadership? 62% said, yes, we're betrayed. Another 67% of the same poll said that the Republican leadership had not done anything. Not enough, they've not done anything to stop this Marxist regime from destroying America. And so that's why, if you want to answer why the 3 outliers, Cruz, Carson, and Trump are garnering over 60% of the vote, that's how it is. So now you get yourself, how do you get back to America's founding principles? How do you reorient the government so that it treats us as a sovereign, which is what we are. So it does things that are both exclusively in the interest of American citizens and exclusively constitutionally, right? And so, in 2010, 12, and 14, we put ever-increasing majorities of leadership in because we all know this had to be stopped. We spent a lot of time and money to do that, and we were just betrayed by a gutless leadership class. And for instance, when the last time we had this lineup, had a lot of nice people that wanted to take a job on. But quite honestly, if you recall, back in 2010, I wasn't a candidate, but I was the only one that debated Tom Perriello for 30 minutes on Obamacare on the Shilling Show. Me to that. I was not, I asked all the candidates back then, as I asked members of Congress, back then it was, we're 9 years in a war, who's our enemy? What doctrines do they believe to make them an enemy? And what's their objective for being at war with us? No one ever answered it. I mean, I asked congressmen today, they can't answer it. And by the way, the whole dust up of Carson mentioning Islamic law is a problem, or Carson or Trump measuring a moratorium on Muslims, they're using imprecise language, but they're actually spot on, like Ted Cruz is spot on in declaring the Muslim Brotherhood an entity. And if you're another candidate, and I wrote a book in 2010 with the former director of the CIA, former director of DA, a bunch of a small handful of national security experts, where we identified all this, and most members of Congress have no idea what is in this book, even though they all give a copy. And if you put a person in a congressional seat with 15 years in a war, if they don't know what's in this book, when are they going to learn it? Because we lost that war. We spent $4 trillion, and the entire Middle East is a destabilized shambles that our primary adversaries, Russia and Iran, amongst them, have entered to fill the vacuum. And most people don't, if you got the details out, because you've always been betrayed by the media, and the media has sold you down the path. So San Bernardino, Fort Hood, the Boston Marathon bombing, all preventable. All myself and others have brought to the attention of the government how badly compromised the agencies are to not only not look at the people that are the enemy, but to scrub and fire people and destroy careers. And whistleblowers like Phil Haney, that was on the Kelly Files 3 weeks ago, the GOP leadership sold them down the path to be investigated instead of fixing things. And Libya, and I'll just wrap up on this, Libya 5 years ago, we backed Al-Qaeda. We armed Al-Qaeda, half the arms went to ISIS. I know this firsthand. I've worked with people, a retired Navy admiral, there's a DOD IG. You can't get the media to report it, even though I did about a half dozen episodes. There's one on the Blaze TV called Zero Footprint that covers this. This is massive corruption, and when you bring it up, you're going to be attacked by your leadership. So you put a person in this congressional seat, they need to be ready to not to buck the leadership on getting the right thing done because they're sold out. Because we're in a war, like I said, there's 320 million Americans, but there's only 435 that have the constitutional power to declare war on an enemy, and they don't know who the enemy is. So Rubio, McCain, and Graham and others, they backed us arming Al-Qaeda. Sounds the same? That's what we did in Libya 5 years ago. And now ISIS is training pilots to take the Libyan Air Force and fly into the Vatican and other European targets. So I trust the American people's instinct. We have to fix the government they're going to set. I have military-age kids. I can't have leaders that don't know who the enemy is sending my kids to go die. I'll go fight myself with them if we have the right enemy, but they don't know who it is. And so my website's live, RossoForCongress.com. You can see all my positions, sign up, donate. Craig Delaney, my campaign manager, is right here. Thank you for your time.